Hi there, welcome. My name is Trina Manudri, and I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Coursera. I'm thrilled to be with you today to discuss the Coursera and Burning Glass Institute's Skills Compass Report of 2023. If you haven't had a chance to look at the report yet, you'll learn a lot more about it through this session, and you'll have access to it in the description for this session. First, I would like to introduce to you Matt Sagelman. Matt was our partner on this report. He is the president of the Burning Glass Institute, and he was also recently named Forbes 50 Future of Work. Welcome, Matt.
So great to be together, Trina.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for partnering with Coursera on this exciting report. As we've talked about many times, I mentioned this report as something I wish I had 5 years ago as a learning leader. So really excited about this work and the value it can bring to learners and learning leaders in the field. Matt, do you want to just start by telling us a little bit more about the Burning Glass Institute for those who may not know of your organization?
So the Burning Glass Institute is a fully independent nonprofit research center whose goal is to advance data-driven research and practice at the intersection of the future of work and the future of learning. So as you can imagine, a lot of alignment with the work that Coursera is doing.
Yes, absolutely. We were thrilled to partner with you on this report. And I was wondering maybe if we could just start and take a step back before we talk specifically about the report. I'd love for you to share with our viewers here what's happening in the industry of skills and why skills are becoming increasingly more important.
You know, we live in a increasingly dynamic time and an increasingly dynamic job market. We did a report together with the Boston Consulting Group several months ago where we looked at the pace of change of skills. And what we found was that the average occupation has seen 37% of its top skills replaced just over the past 5 years. Now, think about that for a second, like kind of that number 37%. We hear numbers all the time and we kind of ignore them. But I'm going to ask you to sort of think about that one, because think about whether 37% of the skills in a typical learning catalog have changed in the space of 5 years. Think about whether the colleges and universities we recruit from, whether 37% of their curriculum has changed in the space of 5 years. And the answer is, of course, not. And yet, the skills that people need to be effective inside their jobs is changing breathtakingly fast. It's also, you know, this is kind of one of these silent waters run deep sort of phenomena that's going on here as well. Because, you know, look, we hear all the breathless headlines, all the people who are predicting how many jobs are going to go away. And there's all sorts of weird calculuses that you hear. I remember there was a consulting firm, we probably won't mention who to protect the guilty, who, you know, kind of a couple of years ago was predicting that 70% of people by year 2030 would be working in jobs that haven't been born yet. It's like, no, actually, no, the data say nothing about that whatsoever. But here's what we do see. It's that the same old jobs need entirely new skills. Like that show, I never actually watched it, with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, it's on the side of a lot of buses, right? Like the old New Adventures of Old Christine. And we have, you know, kind of new skills and old jobs. It's a really important phenomenon because it's precisely because it's more subtle. We see the same job, we see the same talent pools within our companies, and we assume, hey, everything's okay. But increasingly, there are going to be sets of skills that are going to disrupt that work. We're seeing it certainly with generative AI, but it's a much broader phenomenon than that. And that leaves a lot of risk to our talent, a lot of risk to our workforces, because it means that the workforce we have may not be the workforce we need going forward unless we invest it with the right sets of skills.
You know, I have to say, Matt, you and I have had several conversations about skills. And the one thing that I really enjoy about talking with you is, as a learning and development leader, it can seem a bit overwhelming, right? When we hear these numbers and we think about our curriculum and our content and the massive opportunity we have to help the world skill. But when you come at the topic of skill, You're very practical. You look at both sides, and instead of providing, kind of creating this fear, you always see it as an opportunity, and an opportunity that we can actually attain.
And exactly to that point, Trina, like I think, look, you hear a number like 30%, like, oh my God, 37%, oh my gosh, right? Like, how can we keep up? And I think one of the things that we've learned, and I think why we'll talk in a minute about the skills compass, but why I think it's such an important thing is that you don't necessarily need to reinvent every skill inside every talent pool. There are certain roles that matter more than others, and there are certain skills that matter more than others. Not all skills are created equal. And being able to say, hey, look, there's sometimes one or two skills can really differentiate workers. One or two skills can really differentiate a workforce and give it the sets of capabilities that are going to enable it to have that competitive edge. And the trick is then sort of isolating in. How do we pick the one skill? Because we can't reinvent it, so many of the skills. And by the way, when I said 37%, I'll make it even scarier. But then again, but then not. In the top quartile of jobs based on how much skill replacement's going on, it's not 37%, it's 76% of the skills are different today from just a few years ago. And that's across the board, like marketing assistants, which doesn't sound like a high tech job. It's spot on 50%. But when we can say, hey, look, we can't replace all of those skills, but we can find the one or two that are really valuable, that are really going to get the workforce ahead, we can do something about that.
Yeah, I love that sentiment. And so much content around skills is a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot of data, but what we found, and the reason we partnered obviously with you and your organization, is there was not any practical tools or framework to help learning leaders deal with skills in a way that they could drive business outcomes, deliver ROI, close critical skills gaps. Even with the budgets and the budget constraints that they have, we looked, there was just nothing on the market. And I always say, this is the report I could have used 10 years ago, 9 years ago, 5 years ago, as we really struggled in the L&D profession to understand where to spend our money, what type of skills would give us a better return. And that's what I love about this report, is I feel like this is a must-use report rather than a read and put on the shelf report. So can you just give us sort of the context for how we looked at skills, how it breaks down, and the three levers that we
Yeah. So look, and I love that about this being a must use. By the way, it's a must use not only for learning leaders, but it's a must use for learners themselves. And this is one of these great opportunities where the interests of L&D leaders, the interests of hiring managers, and the interests of workers are all right up the same direction. And that's what are the skills that make people more valuable to themselves and to the firm? So what we tried to do is look at three core levers for defining how different skills work. We looked at how valuable a skill is, how much of a boost does it give to somebody's career? We looked at how long does that boost last? How durable is the skill? And we looked at how easy is it to acquire? They're really elegantly simple dimensions, right? Because, that notion that you want to find those skills that give a big boost, you want to be able to understand the boost that it gives, you want to understand what you're going to need to invest, you want to understand what's the replacement cycle. It gives you a business framework for making a smart and optimized decision about what skills to invest in where. And like I use that word optimized, even though it sounds kind of accounting-y and whatever. But it's an important idea, because look, when it comes to skills, and we've talked about this before, there's no silver bullets here. When we first created those three dimensions, we were all hopeful that we were going to find a set of skills that were giving a really big bang, really easy to acquire, really long lasting. And there's precisely zero skills that are all three, that max out on all three. and that's what makes that's what makes an L&D leader's value job on the one hand so difficult, but what makes their work so valuable is they're really making optimized decisions about how to invest in the workforce.
Yeah, great. Matt, when I read a study, the first thing I look at is the validity and the reliability of the data, right? So I know for this study, we looked at learning data of millions of learners, and we looked at millions of job listings. Can you share a little bit more with our viewers here about the approach and the data that came about that created this framework?
So I'll unpack each of the dimensions in this report. So first of all, let's talk about that metric of value of a skill. And we actually looked at a couple of ideas that kind of get mixed into that pot. It combines both how fast a skill is growing and how wide it's spreading across jobs and sectors, but also how much of a market premium there is. That's important both because it's an opportunity for learning leaders to grow their own and to address pain points and the like, but it's also a good metric of in a free market of productivity. What are the skills that make people more valuable and that therefore kind of increases their pay? So that combination of growth and spread and market premium helped us understand the value of skills that we can see from, as you said, about 50 million job openings a year, hundreds of millions historically. We then looked at this question of how durable is a skill. Each of these dimensions, they seem so elegantly simple, as I was saying before, in terms of a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that, as you know, went into computing them. This is one where we looked at a couple of measures, both within postings, but also within career histories. As people move north in their careers, what are the sets of skills, rather, which have staying power, which continue to be important to their work as they continue to rise? What are the sets of skills we also look at from historical postings? We look at how consistent has the demand been over time. Skills have a half-life, and some skills, we all know it's kind of conventional wisdom that half-life is getting shorter and shorter. That's not universally true. There's some sets of skills that have actually been, a very consistent value and continue to provide great returns. And so measuring the half-life of each one was something where we developed, some pretty robust models around. And then I'm trying to, I think, Coursera team, of course, has tremendous knowledge of what it takes to learn a skill and to learn it well and develop some really great metrics there.
Thanks, Matt. What I love about this is, in the world of skills, we focus on hot skills or old skills or technical skills and what we unfortunately sometimes call soft skills, which I think you and I both agree is not the right term for those skills. And those breakdowns have never really helped a learning leader take action, right? Or drive budget in certain ways. This framework actually allows you to think about the mix across your organization, how to drive that ROI, and different learning approaches for different skill sets. So I'm wondering, and we have 5 categories of skills. They're each unique. And again, on those 3 levers that you mentioned, the time to scale, longevity, and the value. Let's talk a little bit about the 5 categories and maybe give some examples of skills that sit within them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's so spot on. I think one of the things that these sets of dimensions, how valuable is a skill, how durable is a skill, and how quick is it to acquire. One of the things that they lend themselves to is exactly as you described, business decisions. And so when we tried to look at the overall landscape of skills and how they performed against those 3 dimensions, we said, okay, let's categorize them based upon the kinds of investment decisions and investment rationales that an L&D leader might make. There are sets of skills. We talked about 5 skills, as you pointed out, right? So we talked about solid investments. We talked about those that pay quick dividends. Those are enduring. Those are adaptive. Those are commodity skills. If you think about the solid investments, these are the ones that are going to be a slog rather, but they're worth the slog, right? So Scrum skills or project management skills, they are, they're not necessarily easy to learn. They're not going to be low cost to invest people with, but they pay back really well. There's all sorts of roles where having the difference between somebody who has that project management capability, to use that example, and those who don't, is a really big difference in their performance. And it's a skill which is enduring. It's not a new skill. I think we can expect that people are always going to need to manage projects, and they're going to need it across no matter what job they continue to step into. I mean, think about project management, by the way. I know I'm going off a little tangent here, but I do that. Right. But, look, that's whether you're a IT project manager, you need project management, whether you're in construction, you need project management, whether you're a nurse, who increasingly is managing a care across a bunch of different providers. They may not call it project management in nursing, but it's equally relevant. So you can kind of see why that kind of investment is a solid investment. We think about a quick dividend, like negotiation skills or planning skills or budgeting skills. Those are great skills because they pay off really quickly. They're not that hard to acquire. So they're kind of those quick hits that someone could get. They're not necessarily going to top out like somebody's value because they know how to negotiate. They're not necessarily worth, they're not necessarily dramatically increasing their pay or the like. But they're getting a really big, a really significant and meaningful boost, and you can acquire it quickly. You can acquire it cheaply, and it'll endure. There's other sets of skills like enduring skills, collaboration skills or writing skills, which are where some of those kind of foundational skills, those soft skills that we both hate the term of, live. One of the things I love about this categorization is that I feel like it also, and I know Trina, you articulate this better than I, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. It feels to me like this categorization also gets to the where of L&D, right? Like there's some sets of skills that you want to train on the job. There's some sets of skills where someone can get on the Coursera for Business platform, and that's probably the most effective way. And there's some sets of skills that you probably wanted somebody to have learned that in college, and that sort of longer term investment skill frame makes more sense. And you've been in the trenches as a learning leader. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
One of the big ahas I had when this data started to come together was around the adaptive skills. And because the skills in this category, which had never really been grouped before until this framework, are the ones that I have struggled with the most as a CLO, because the time to skill is medium to high, no question. The value of the skill is high, but the longevity is really short. And so you need to create a learning program that is effective, that engages people, that will deliver results. However, that content is going to rapidly change. And I think in the industry we made, examples, artificial intelligence, network security. We've made so many mistakes in this space trying to figure out. We developed an amazing academy internally in a company, and it looked fantastic. And in 3 months, all that money was gone because 80% of it had to change because we didn't build it in a flexible format. So the adaptive skills was a big aha. So that when you think about it, right, in terms of longevity, time to skill, value, all of a sudden you can make more strategic decisions about not only where to spend your money to get the return, but how to acquire that content, where to go to Coursera and use the Career Academy or the Leadership Academy, or where to take that content and put a wrapper of your own personal company around that type of content. So that one really stood out for me as like, oh gosh, if we had known this like 5 years ago.
I love that because, I mean, think about those network security skills. You mentioned that example, and it's a perfect one because you're right. I mean, the technology is constantly changing. How do you stay ahead of cyber criminals, and guard networks, and how do you deal with, as networks have gone from internal networks to cloud-based networks, right? How do you manage that? And so they're constantly changing. You have to constantly, kind of, people have to constantly be investing in their skills. And I think, what is so powerful about having that, being able to categorize which skills behave that way, is also, to your point, we can then say, okay, here's the places where learning isn't a side thing. It isn't something where, okay, this is a learning benefit, or the like. I know some people like to talk about learning benefits. But this is a core part of people continuing to be productive. This is a core part of how our talent base stays valuable. And so we have to construct it into the role, and into the performance metrics of the role. Make sure that people are actually keeping their skills up to date. There's an economist at Harvard named David Deming, whom I get to work with. One of my side gigs is being a visiting fellow at the Kennedy School. Um, and one of the things that David's looked at is what happens to people in the STEM field. Because there's a lot of talk about, hey, is there a STEM gap out there and the like, and when he did the math of just how many people are graduating in STEM, there shouldn't be a STEM gap. And a lot of what he found is that if you're going into the field of STEM and the kind of skills that where adaptive skills, DevOps skills, Azure skills, network security skills, kind of are the ones that really characterize the whole landscape, then you've got all these high value skills, but to your point, they don't last long. And so you're either constantly having to upgrade your skills, or you're going out of date. And so what happens is that, when somebody graduates from college in a STEM field, they're making almost 50% more than their peers. 10 years out, they're only making you 10% more because they never get that experience premium. And so a lot of them wind up leaving the STEM field. It doesn't need to be that way if you can always stay ahead, if you can always know what are the skills that are going to give you that kind of value.
Yeah, in Coursera, we talk a lot about stackability. So, in terms of network security, AI, if you want to learn a little bit about it, you can take a very short module and learn a little bit about it. If you really want to master this adaptive skill, you can get a certification or a specialization. But this report shows you it's going to take more time. The value is there, but it takes more time to develop those deep skills. So, even at the learner level, you can really gain a lot of knowledge from this report and thinking about the framework of the 5 skill sets.
What's so cool about that is that, one of the things we've learned from studying millions of people's careers is that there's all these kind of narratives out there of the coal miners who become coders or whatever. Most people's careers don't work that way. Most people make a whole series of small steps. If I try to leap a tall building in a single bound, I'm going to run into it, and get a really bad headache. And so this notion of, hey, learning doesn't have to be this big exercise in deferred gratification of, hey, trust us, you'll learn this thing. It's going to take you a really long time, but eventually you'll get some payback. But instead, where each step, right, like you can learn a little bit, it's going to increase your productivity. It's going to increase your value. You can learn a little bit more. It increases your worth yet more and positions you to get promotions along the way. That idea of stackability that you just described is really powerful in enabling people and more people to access the kind of learning that makes them more productive.
Yeah, well, Matt, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. I know that we've tried to describe this report. You and I could talk about this report for another 10 hours because I know as a CLO, it's so practical and useful. Our teams are out there sharing it with our clients and they're loving it and thinking about how they can focus their budgets and their strategies around it. Um, Everyone, you can go to the description of this session to download the report. You can go to Coursera.org. If you have any questions on the report, you can reach out to Coursera, Burning Glass Institute. We'd be happy to talk with you. But Matt, when you think about this report and the future of skills, are there any last comments or thoughts you'd like to leave folks with today?
So the one thing I would share is this, that we've been talking, of course, about how learning leaders can use these kinds of findings, and of course, the report was meant to drive the kind of investment decisions that learning leaders are responsible for. But I think this is also at least as valuable for learners themselves in making smart and well-informed decisions about how to navigate their own careers. Uh, you know, it's really confusing to know what are the skills that are going to get you ahead. And there's so much opportunity here to help people make choices in the same ways that we've been talking about for learning leaders and their organizations. What are the things that are going to give me that quick hit in my career? What are the things that are going to allow me to keep rising over the arc of my career? And how do I align that with my own horizons, with my own ambitions? It works at every level. We very recently released a report together with Jeff Salingo where we looked at college degrees and what's the value of a college degree in a degree optional world. Increasingly employers are realizing that maybe you don't need a degree. Maybe it's the skills that you have that count. We know that the public is increasingly questioning the value of a degree. And we found certainly that degrees do continue to offer a lot of value, but very often in any given major, for example, there's sometimes, to your point about actionability, right? Sometimes one skill can make a 20-30% difference in how much a graduate makes. 20-30% sounds theoretical, but for a new graduate, that can mean $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year in earnings. And just like learning leaders need a framework like this to be able to figure out what are the right ones, higher education leaders need that, and learners themselves deserve to have that same insight.
Well, thanks, Matt. I have to say, we were so pleased to partner with you and the Burning Glass Institute on this work. And so happy to have you here with us today. I can see why Forbes named you in the 50 future of work, because once again, you see skills not as an overwhelming coming at us, how do we keep up, but an opportunity that if we have the right framework and we're strategic, we can seize opportunities like the one you just described. So thank you so much for bringing that optimism into the conversation and for helping us with this report that we're extremely excited about.
Well, thanks so much for the chance to join you, and thanks for the partnership.